Okay, here we go, guys. I'm going to click phase as I'm talking. Test, 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 test. Oh my God, it's a huge difference.
Does it make a difference?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Holy cow. Whoa.
This is the Self-Recording Band Podcast, the show where we help you make exciting records on your own, wherever you are, DIY style. Let's go. Hello and welcome to the Self-Recording Band Podcast. I am Benedict Hein, your host, and I'm here with my friend and co-host, Malcolm Owen-Flood. How are you, Malcolm?
I'm good. Before we started recording this, I kicked over an entire AeroPress full of coffee in the studio. But aside from that, things are really great. I already mastered a song today, and I'm just really stoked that people are still making music through this whole coronavirus situation. So yeah, things are great, man. How about yourself?
That sounds awesome, man. Except the coffee thing.
Yeah, the tragic loss of coffee.
Yeah, but as you said, at least the studio now smells even better than before.
Yes.
And I'm just assuming that it smelled good before. I don't know. I've never been there in person, but now that there's coffee on the floor, it's pretty. It's definitely not worse. So, yeah. For me, one thing happened that's really cool, and that is I have a mic stand in front of me and here in my home office, because I didn't have that for the past couple of episodes. And last time I had a ridiculous pile of tape rolls that were holding my microphone, and today I'm talking into a microphone that's mounted on a mic stand. So that's
like a professional master or professional audio engineer for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel much more professional today, and yeah, things are good. Yeah, I mean, we are still in the same situations, and we've talked about that. But other than that, things are good. And I'm excited to talk about today's topic because we've been covering drums and guitars and basic mindset stuff and a lot of the drum programming stuff and all sorts of things. But we haven't really touched on vocals yet. So today is the time to do that, and that's why we are talking about 5 essential steps to a pro vocal today. Now, Malcolm, you prepared this checklist basically, or this list of things. Yeah, just I would say just start with the first thing that comes to mind when you think about recording a pro vocal. What is the first thing you would make sure to get right?
Okay, the one thing that I think is overlooked very often, and also I'm super guilty of this as well. Yeah, it's really easy to just get in the zone of thinking about what sounds good in the song and stuff like that, and just essentially totally neglect the actual situation that you're placing the singer in, and their comfort level and their emotional state and pretty much everything about how they're doing. And just think about what you're getting into your recording software. So I think the first thing on the checklist is just overall atmosphere and vibe.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's going to affect everything else. Think about anybody listening to this has probably played a show at some point, and think about the mindset going into those shows. If you're excited, you probably had fun. If you're angry and pissed off at the rest of your band, probably wasn't the best gig. So there's just no denying that our emotional state and the vibe of the situation we're in, the atmosphere, affects how we perform. And I don't know if you've noticed, but vocals are the most important part about communication in music, and how a singer's able to convey emotion into a song really plays a huge part in how people react to the song. A song that makes people feel something is a song that actually is successful and gets noticed.
So much. That's basically all that matters, is does the song connect with whoever's listening to it, and what does it create? What emotion does it create? How does it make the listener feel? And there's the number one thing that communicates those things is the vocal. And if the vocalist, him or herself, doesn't really feel it, it will never come across as authentic and pure and honest and everything, and it will probably not connect as much. So yeah, absolutely. And I also agree that it's overlooked, because especially in DIY recording situations, people will use whatever room they have available, and the room looks, whatever the situation is, they will just use that. And they might not think about the difference it would make if they would make it so that the singer would be a little more comfortable. And I'm guilty of that as well, so much. I've recorded vocalists in like cold, uncomfortable spaces with it's just no way you could do a really great performance and forget everything around you in those situations. So we've all done that, I guess. But it's easy to improve, basically, but makes a huge difference, right?
Yeah, sometimes you have to. Sometimes you have to make do with a really terrible situation, and just get it done. But there's normally something that can be done. And if it's a cold room, get them a blanket.
Yeah.
There's always some kind of step you can do to make it better, and it always pays off. It really does. It'll make your job better, like the person running the computer. Something, you might be in the self-recording band podcast. You might be also running the computer as well as singing. But so in that case, that's really tricky. But like my go-to thing is like waiting on them with water and tea, being like, oh, you want some tea? Do you like honey in it? Kind of thing. Just like getting that stuff taken care of. And like, oh yeah, I'd love some tea. That'd be great. Now they're a little happy. Like, oh, water's coming, like without them even asking. Sometimes I'll try and send another band member in, so they have to kind of serve them. That makes singers happy too. Their ego's being fed when the drummer comes in with a hot, warm cup of tea.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I'm like always on is lighting, because personally, lighting really affects how I work. So I like go through all the options. I'm like, do you like it with the lights off? Do you like it dimmed? Do you want these LED strips on? Candles? That kind of stuff is just like it sets a mood kind of thing. And lighting, I think, really does affect. There's a reason that romantic, expensive restaurants have candlelit dinners going on, because it does set a mood. And if you start, like, the reason I always go and turn off the lights and experiment with those options rather than just asking them is because it makes them think about the mood. Now they have to actually consider what kind of mood they want to be in when they're singing this song, and then they're going to tell you, and that'll help you even go a little further with figuring out how to create the vibe that they need to sing the song.
Absolutely. It's also making them feel that, like, taking the pressure away is also part of it. It's just they should feel like they are here because it's fun, because they should enjoy it. They are not here to work, quote unquote. So it is work, and it is effort that you have to put into it, but it should not feel like that. It should feel like something you would do because you love it in your free time. It's something that you want to enjoy, and they have to trust you that you won't make fun of them, that it's okay, that if they make mistakes, that they can be comfortable, that they can try things without having to be afraid or ashamed or anything. They need to be able to fully relax, and all of that plays into that. And if it's a comfortable room that you just want to spend time in with a person that's easy and relaxed, and if you have everything you need to, so you don't have to think about like things like, as you said, water or a blanket or the temperature in general or anything like that, then the only thing you have to do is get in the mood and perform and do the thing that you're here for. Everything else should be taken care of. And you can do that in a jam space. It doesn't have to be a fancy facility or studio. There are easy ways to do that. Lights are a big one, as you said. A couple of candles or LED strips or indirect like lighting instead of the cold work light thing, Yeah. There's simple things like that already make it so much better. Or just cleaning up the room. Like, I know how most rehearsal rooms look, what those look like, and I know how ours looks, and it's awful. But even just cleaning the room, making it so that there's not chaos around the person who has to perform. That can also be a big one, because that can be, if there are all sorts of distractions and you just feel the need, if it's your own jam space, especially if you just see all the things you should do and could improve, it might distract you from your performance. And so getting this done before the session, and being in a room that you are comfortable being in, goes a long way. And in a jam space, these can be small things like cleaning up the room and doing all the work that needs to be done before you can actually start the session. So yeah, I totally agree that this is a big one. And it might sound weird to you. You might think, why should I get it that it's nicer, but it's not really affecting anything. But it is. I
really
truly
is.
believe that. So
yeah, there's been times where I've been like comping vocal takes, and for people that don't know what comping is, it's when you're comparing different takes and choosing the best option. And I've got there's two takes, and one is perfectly in tune and perfectly on time, but kind of just doesn't have the soul, and the other one has all this emotion and is a little out of tune and a little off time. I'm going to choose that emotional take 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Like, no question asked. It's always going to be that emotional take. And sometimes the singer I'm working with will be like, oh, like, I'm out of tune. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, first off, I might be able to fix that. And even if I can't, it's still better. It's still going to actually make somebody feel something. So, I mean, there's always like a varying degree of how far you're willing to go on that. If it's really out of tune, then yeah, maybe you have to hit it again. But the emotion trumps the technical accuracy
all the time. Every single time that's the case. I would always choose the better, like the take with more emotion and energy and everything and vibe over a technically perfect take, for sure.
Yes.
And also, it's a weird thing that this is especially true for vocals, everything that we've talked about now in this episode, because of course it also helps if a guitarist or drummer feels comfortable, but it's for some reason not the exact same thing. I just feel that a vocal is such a personal thing because you are the instrument. You are it's a part of you as a human. It's not a guitar, not something external that you use and play, but it's you. Like everything, you make the sound. It's your lyrics. It comes out of your mouth. You have to be proud of that. You have to make people feel a certain way with your body, with what comes out of that body and brain and everything. And it's, I don't know, it's just much more personal and intimate than any other instrument. And that's why this first bullet point on our list here is so important. And it's, I don't think it's the same for every other instrument. It helps, but it's not the same as with the vocal.
No, the idea that a microphone is the instrument of a vocalist is a complete misconception. It is just a way of capturing them. The microphone is not their instrument. They are their instrument. So that's why it matters so much. Where a guitarist has to channel emotion through a guitar, and the guitar is going to filter it, and you're going to end up with what the guitar outputs. It's not that way with a vocalist. The microphone isn't going to change the emotion of the vocalist.
Yeah. All right. So don't overlook that. Make sure you spend a little time optimizing that, and just ask the person who should do the vocal. Like if you're unsure what to do, if you are a self-recording band, you're probably recording yourself, so you probably know a couple of things about your singer, or you are the singer maybe. You know what she likes or he likes, and if not, just ask. And it's not about what you think is great, or if you are the person recording that, or if you are not the vocalist. It's about what the vocalist thinks it's great, or what he or she needs to perform well. So just ask and make sure that everything is comfortable for them. And
yeah, there's a great story. I think it was Rick Rubin doing the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and Anthony Kiedis, singer of Red Hot Chili Peppers, they routed cables to his bedroom so he could record from his bedroom in their like mansion they're recording at, but it was just because like he wanted them to be comfortable, you know.
Yeah.
That record did pretty darn good. I think it was Californication. So it's just like insanely successful album.
Yeah. Sure. That's proof actually that this is happening. There's a studio in Greece, I think, on a Greek island, that is a pretty famous studio that has mic and I don't know about instrument, but definitely mic lines in all the rooms. It's like a big facility with like a hotel, like a couple of bedrooms and lounges and bars and everything, and a pool and everything. And everywhere, I think even at the pool, there are mic lines, just in case somebody feels comfortable wherever he or she is at, that they could just plug in a mic there and record it and send it to wherever the control room is. So,
that's awesome.
It just matters. So
Yeah. Oh man, that sounds really nice.
Yeah, you gotta look up the
I wanna
studio.
go
That's such a dream. I'm gonna Google it and shoot you the link because it's amazing.
Oh yeah, throw it in the show notes as well. I'm
Yeah.
sure people would love to see that.
Yeah.
I think we should tie this into what was actually going to be number 3 on the list, but should probably be number 2, is communication, because it's so closely related to what we're talking about.
Oh yeah, great idea. Yeah.
Because it's all of that stuff will only be enhanced if there's good communication going on. And that communication is going to help you kind of narrow in on what is possibly creating a barrier from them really getting this vocal take emotionally dialed in. And there's a couple obvious things that are, again, just so commonly overlooked. And again, I just know there's some people I've recorded that are going to listen to this and be like, he didn't do any of this for me. And it's like, I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. Sometimes I do, and sometimes I just don't. I get too focused on the wrong things. So
yeah, we are essentially preaching to ourselves here often in this episode. And that's part of why I like it doing this so much, because I know some things are right or wrong to do, but I don't follow my own rules every single time. And this podcast really helps me get better at that. So, yeah.
yeah. Again, I'm sorry, guys. I'll try better next time. And you did great anyways. So a big one that I have done and that makes a big difference is sitting down with the vocalist and then discussing what the song's actually about right before they record. And again, that's kind of like how the lighting, like experiment with the mood by like adjusting the lighting, gets them thinking about what mood they want to be in, discussing the lyrics and discussing the meaning of the song and the emotion of the song with them, gets them thinking about what the song's actually about and gets them actually feeling. By them bringing up what the song's about, they're going to actually start feeling that. So you're kind of moving them into this emotional spot where they're actually going to like be in that mindset as they sing. Where otherwise they might just be focusing on how they're breathing and how on tune they are, kind of thing, and just remembering the lyrics, kind of reading them off a page, rather than actually kind of coming from that spot that they were in when they wrote it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's basically all you need to say about that. Just do it. It's
like it just can't hurt, right?
No,
it can't hurt, even if they were like, it's private. They're still thinking about it. You still accomplished your goal, even if they don't tell you what it's about. Like they totally stonewall you, you still did your job there. Another one that I really like is asking the singer privately, or that doesn't even have to be privately, but just asking them if they want you to kick the rest of the band out of the room while they record vocals, because it's a like extremely vulnerable, nerve-wracking process for people to be on display in this little booth, or maybe not even in a booth in some settings. It might just be in the same room that everybody else is in. And I would say that most people don't like that experience of just kind of being watched by everyone and critiqued under the microscope. So when I ask that, it's pretty common that people are like, oh, that would be great. If you'll be the bad guy, you'll ask them to all leave. That sounds awesome. And it's just one less stress for them. And they can, again, get into the moment a little bit more. It's also just going to result in a better product, not having like 4 to 5 different people yelling different commands at them and just tearing them apart each take. It's just a more quick process of getting a vocal track. They can always listen to it after, of course. They will listen to it after. But I think the less people in the room while you're recording vocals is generally the best. Going to have yield the best results.
I totally agree. And I even think you have to have a feeling for what the singer really wants, because sometimes they might say, oh, it's okay, they can stay here. But actually, they would love for people to leave, but they just might be afraid to say it, or they think it's going to be okay, but it's still affecting them. So I would even go as far as like communicating before the session to the whole band that only people who are essential to the process should be there, and everybody else should just not be there. Because I cannot think of a single situation where it would be helpful to have anybody in the room while tracking vocals, except for when that person is like the producer or co-producer or has just a good vibe with the singer. And sometimes there are people who need to be there because they can push the singer a bit. They just know how to talk to them. They have a great vibe, and it just clicks then you need those people in the room because they can do the producer job and you engineer then. And it just help make the performance better. But other than that, everybody else who cannot do such a thing it's just not helping. I just can't think of a situation where that ever was the case, because even the most disciplined person sitting on the couch watching the session will eventually open their mouth and say something about the performance, and this can totally destroy the vibe of the session. It doesn't have to be something mean. If they add some critique that is totally okay and not mean and everything, in that moment it could be the worst thing you could do to that singer or that vocalist. And yeah, it's just better to not have anybody voice his opinion while you track a vocalist. I totally think that that's the case. I've never had a session where this didn't happen. Whenever the rest of the band is in the room, somebody has an opinion on something. It's always that way, and it doesn't really help, because now you can either tell that person to shut up, or you can take the critique or the advice and then tell the singer to do something different that you would normally not have done if the person would not have been in the room.
Yeah.
So it's just a weird situation, and that does not mean that you cannot have opinions and ideas, because it's your band as well. But you should listen to what was recorded, then gather feedback, get together, talk about it, and then and then implement changes or not. But it shouldn't be the first thing you do when you start recording a vocal. You should leave the singer alone for a bit, give them room to experiment, to get into a groove, a flow, and record something before you start tearing it apart. So yeah, it's always better to not be in the room, I think, and then listen to the result and then talk about what could be better or what's great and give constructive feedback and everything, but not the second the session begins. And that will just happen when people are in the room.
It definitely will. And yeah, one really bad remark can just ruin it. Like the session's over. You just won't get it. They're just going to be like thinking about all the wrong things, stressed out. People can't sing when they're stressed out. Your body has to be relaxed, and I mean, I guess that's not always true, but the general consensus is that people perform better when they aren't stressed.
Yeah, of course. So that kind of is also connected to the next thing here that also falls under the communication bullet point here, and that is, can the singer handle being present for editing? Because that's basically the same thing. Sometimes it's good to have, like, editing means, but if you don't know what that means, editing is you record a vocal, you comp together a take, and then there's almost always, even with the best singers, there is some things you can do to even improve the performance. You can correct the intonation, you can correct the timing, you can change the feel a bit, you can move things around so that they sit better in the context of the song. And just it's not mixing, it's not about the sound, it's just editing the performance so that it works perfectly and carries all the emotion and everything. And that it's almost always necessary to some degree, even with the best vocalist. This is just a necessary step. And sometimes some people can handle that, but others not so much, because it can feel like as if someone would take the performance that you put a lot into and then chop it like to pieces, tear it apart, and then put it back together in a weird way. And you might feel as if your performance was not good enough, which is not the case. It's just a normal part of the process. And if you are the type of person that just can't handle that, or if your singer is the type of person that just can't handle that, you should talk about that and do the editing without the singer being present. Or if somebody else does the editing, then he or she should do it without the singer in the room. So,
yeah, like almost always people don't like the sound of their voice. I'm sure everybody here can like vouch for that. They hear your own voice and they're like, "Who is that? They sound dumb." But I don't know what that phenomenon is, but it's just is a weird thing. And singers are no exception. And so they hear them like even like taking it back a step further, comping can even be too much for some people. just the simple act of choosing which take you want to use. Some people just like, that's like the worst thing in the world. They just hear like 4 comps, and then by the end of that 4 takes of one part, and by the end of that 4th take, they just think they're all garbage and they should just go and redo it the whole song. And you're like, oh, slow down. Like, actually, one of those was really good, and we've got the whole rest of the song that's probably good as well. You don't have to think about redoing the whole song, kind of thing. So I would say the usual preferred approach for me is to do the comp and the edit without them present, and then bring them back in and be like, hey, like, or at least the rough comp, and then just like, hey, here is the comp I made. Have a listen, and if there's anything that you think we should go and repunch, let me know, and we'll look at that. And usually they're like, okay, well, that was awesome. This part bugged me, and we go look at it, and then we just look at another couple takes, find something there, no problem. They don't have to even re-sing it. They've got it, kind of thing. It was just something that we disagreed on for what we liked about it. But some people, I don't know. Benny, what are your thoughts on that? Because some people seem to really thrive in the comping. They're like, they know exactly what they want.
Yeah, exactly. It matters on, it depends on the person, on the singer. Some don't care, or some just can't handle it. Others do care, and they know the process. They are okay with it. They can handle it. They even want to be part of it because they really know, okay, I want this word from this take, and this word from this take, and this sentence here and there. And for some people that really works, and it actually helps you because you're faster then. And there are people who are right. They just know when it was the right take and when it wasn't. Some people have a feel for that, and yeah, if that's you, or if you have a singer who's like that, then you can do it together, but totally depends on the person. And you said something interesting, and I want to get back. I want to come back to that later in our 5th bullet point. But I will just say now that what you basically described is you would record with a vocalist. You would make them sing the whole song or parts of it without like telling them, now we do this word or this sentence and this, and we exchange that or that. You just basically let them perform, keep the flow going, and then when you think you have enough takes and when everybody thinks that that was a good performance, you send them out of the room. You do it on a different day or whatever. You will do the comp without them there and the editing without them there, and then they come back and then you listen to it, and then you might swap out some things. But essentially, you won't do you say that it could be better to not do any of the comping and editing while they are performing. And I agree. And that's one approach to it, like keeping the flow going. Just have them perform, not worrying about the comp, just recording take over take over take over take, saving all of them, not deleting any of them, maybe taking notes if you know that there was a really good spot in one of the takes so you won't forget it later. That's an important thing if you do that approach, I think, that you make notes so that you have the singer sing the song 5 or 10 times, and when the sixth take in that or that part, there was a really awesome spot. You will want to make a note there so that you won't forget later. And then the singer is not there when you put all that together and combine the best parts of each take. That is one approach, and I like that, and it can work, and it's good for the singer because they only have to perform. There's no breaks for any technical stuff, and there's no editing, no tedious stuff. But there's another, a little more advanced way that I will talk about later again that I really like. It's not for everybody, but I prefer that actually.
I was just gonna say, stick around for the end and we'll get to some advanced stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
but
we'll break down some advanced techniques.
Yeah, but if no matter what you choose to do, important is, I think, that you talk to the singer about the process and how it will go before sending them in front of the microphone or into the booth or the recording room. So whatever you choose to do, whatever the approach is, talk about that and then stick to it, so that there are no surprises, no unexpected breaks, no waiting without knowing when you will be able to continue, because that can also really ruin the vibe of a session. Because you might just be into it and in the zone, in the flow. You just want to perform, but you have to wait forever because somebody's looking for a word here and a take there, and then there's some weird noise here, and it just talk about the process. And if you decide that you will just record performances and not worry about the comping and the technical stuff, then just let it flow and do that and do all the stuff later. And if you say no, we want to do it part by part, we want to listen to every take, we want to analyze everything, also fine. Sorry, if you are the type of person who likes that approach, then talk about that first as well, and then do it that way. As long as the singer knows what you're gonna do, that's, I think, is the most important thing.
Yeah, definitely be upfront with that kind of stuff. And like, I have my favorite ways of doing it, like you were kind of just describing there, but I change it depending on the singer. Some people, I'll let them sing the whole song front to finish. And like just get them to sing it like 3 or 4 times, and then I'll make a comp from that. Usually I'll break it up into small sections, but it does depend on the type of song, the singer, and how they want to do it is also important if they have experience and like are going for a certain thing. But like a really heartfelt, dynamic song, I'm going to try giving it a shot, letting them do the whole thing front to finish, because they're just going to get locked into that emotion, and it's going to show that they started at the beginning and got to the end. You'll get something out of that. And it'll be harder. It will be less accurate probably in the end, but it'll have something else. And that is up to whoever is producing the project to make that decision on how you're going to capture that singer.
Yeah, for sure.
And going back to explaining the process to them, a lot of like a new vocalist walks into that room and stares at the microphone, and they're like, okay, like, do I just sing it once and we're done? Like they have no idea what it takes. So it's up to you to explain it to them. And really be clear, like, okay, so we're going to break it down. We're going to sing the first sentence like 8 times, Don't worry, like just keep doing it. And like, cause it can be really frustrating, or they might think that the only reason they're doing it again is because they suck, and that's just not true. It's just like, oh, you just wanted like an alternate take, or you just wanted a layer, if you're trying to grab doubles of stuff, they might just think that they can't nail it, but in fact they're doing good, and you're just not letting them know. So be extra clear about what's happening.
Sure. And I think it's a weird situation a little bit here, because we are talking to you as if you were the engineer and record other people, but many of you might be the singer, like you might be the singer yourself, and you might be the one recording yourself on your own, or you might be the one recording, you might be the vocalist, but somebody else will record you. In all those cases, I think it's important to say that, as weird as it sounds, you have to allow yourself to do all those things as well. So you have to, even if you're on your own, you have to allow yourself to make mistakes. You have to allow yourself to, you have to come up with a way that you like working. So when you record yourself, you also have to decide, do I want to do whole takes of the whole song? Do I want to do parts? You don't want to, because sometimes without even anybody else being present, you might freak out after a couple of takes because you think you're just not good enough, or it takes you too long, or some people can be really hard on themselves. And so you have to be kind with yourself here as well, if you are the person recording yourself, or if you are not, if somebody else in your band records you and you just listen to this episode, you should maybe tell them about those things and be open and communicate what you would like and how you would like to approach it, because they might not be experienced. They might not have listened to this episode or to any other resources on that topic. So you might need to tell them how you want to do it, and you might have to communicate approaches and ideas for that. And yeah, it's a little different than as if we were talking to engineers recording other bands. I think there are all sorts of situations here. And I know the feeling, because I've recorded myself a couple of times for my band without anybody else in the room. And there was no pressure, and nobody telling me nobody telling mean things or doing anything that would prevent me from performing well. But I was kind of hard and mean to myself, because I just wanted to get it done, and I wanted to be good. And once I realized that it took me a little longer than I expected, I kind of felt I was disappointed of myself, so there was no one to lift me up, and I kind of talked myself into this situation where I thought, what am I doing here? I'm not even a vocalist. Somebody else should sing in this band. And it can get dangerous if you are alone, because nobody's there to talk you out of that and to like save the day there, save the situation there. So just be kind to yourself and allow for breaks and allow for mistakes, and talk to yourself about how you want to approach it. Like, as weird as it sounds.
Yeah, I think like for myself, I don't do much singing, but I've definitely had some times where I've done the same thing. I record myself as like a backing vocal on a song or something with no one else in the room, and I'm miserable through those experiences. And there was like one time somewhere deep on the internet, there's a song that I sang lead on that I'll never reveal. And, I thankfully had somebody else engineer that session and kind of produce the vocal out of me. And that was a way better result and a way better time for me. And I don't think that's going to be true for everyone. I think as the singer, you've got to decide if you have what it takes to be the person that gets the vocal out of yourself, like produce yourself, or when you should make the call to bring in a friend or a bandmate to sit down and run the computer for you so you can just focus on vocal or somebody that knows what you're capable of and can produce that quality out of you.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
And also one more thing that you mentioned in there, you mentioned that maybe the singer or the other band member hadn't listened to this episode. And if you're in a band and you're listening to this, share it with your bandmates, even if they're not going to be engineering. We're talking about stuff that helps musicians as well. The more they understand, the better.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, do that. Let's move on. So to get back to our list here, so we had performance, vibe, atmosphere, everything like that. Then we had communication as our second point here. And before we move on to the other three, I want to make sure we don't forget the warm-up, because we didn't talk about that in the first bullet point.
Right.
Just without going super deep here, there are great resources on the internet about that. There are whole courses on warm-up techniques, vocal techniques, and you should at least Google that, watch some YouTube videos, learn about that, and just do something, because warm-up is so important, and too many people don't do it or don't do it properly. And then they not only do you risk like ruining your voice before the session and compromising the result you're going to get, but you might actually really cause harm or permanent damage. You can absolutely, especially with the heavier, louder music, you can really damage your voice, your vocals forever, and without even realizing. And so I wouldn't take this too lightly. I would take this seriously. I would do some research here. I would find some basic warm-up techniques. Not only will your recording be better, but you will prevent injuries, basically, and permanent damage.
Yes. Yeah. I'm kind of embarrassed that we didn't mention that sooner. Warm-up is so important. And for some reason, so many singers don't want to do it, or they just won't unless you tell them to. And it's essential. And you should also do it before every gig.
Yeah. And maintenance afterwards as well. There are things you can do to prevent damage after the gig is done, because whenever especially when live gig situations, but also after a long recording session, you probably damaged something, at least for now. Like, it's repairable, but it's for now you just put stress on your vocal cords and everything. And and there are ways to recover faster and to prevent permanent damage. I know a lot of people who breathe steam after a long recording session or a live gig. So I know, especially in the hardcore metal world, where people scream a lot and it's really tough for the vocal cords and everything. I know people who wouldn't talk a single word after a session or after a gig. They would just sit there in the backstage and breathe steam. And they have a little like travel, like a kettle where you can heat water, like a small thing like that. They would sit there in the backstage, plug it in, and just breathe steam for an hour without talking to anybody. And then they go to bed, and that's it. So there are some people disciplined like that because they know that people pay every day to hear them sing. So they want to preserve their voice and be able to perform and do their best every single day. And a long recording session is the same thing. Even and especially if you've booked a couple of, or not booked, but if you like blocked or booked yourself in your rehearsal room a couple of days for vocals, you don't want to ruin everything on the first day. So
No.
if you know you have to sing again tomorrow and the day after that, you want to make sure you don't do too long. You want to make sure you drink enough water. You want to make sure you warm up, and you want to make sure you do something after the session to make sure you can perform again tomorrow. And too many people don't really do that. And then every day the voice is a little worse than the day before, and that's not a good thing.
No. And another news flash: booze and no sleep and partying are really bad for vocals.
Yeah.
Extremely bad for vocals. So, and gigs are bad for vocals. So like if the band is playing the night before your vocal session, just move the session. You're not going to get a good vocal the next day because they're going to be up all night playing and screaming and probably partying. It's like the trifecta of bad vocal performances coming that next day. They need to be like, for me, I think sleep is huge. I think sleep is like probably one of the most important things for a good vocal session the next day. They need to be well rested. And coffee and alcohol and stuff just dehydrates people, and they'll burn out quicker. So rest and just well-being is worth communicating in advance as well, and scheduling for.
Yes. And the funny thing is that the most simple, basic things are the most effective here, at least in my experience. There are all kinds of like esoteric things and beliefs, and there are special teas. People use special, even like pills or things you can chew on or whatever. There's all sorts of stuff and all sorts of things you can use. But to me, the most effective things are sleep, drink enough water, like non-sparkling water during the session. Just keep it like prevent your vocal cords from drying out. Humidity in the room, like if your room is really, really dry, you might want to have like a humidifier or something in the room. So water, humidity, sleep, and warm up, and that's, if you take care of those things, that's basically that's almost all you need. Like everything else,
you're primed.
Like that's it. And people always debate about this drink or that drink. I would just say skip really cold drinks. Skip anything that's like with even things like coffee. Anything with like the acidity, I think is the word, right? That like that's aggressive on your body, on your vocal cords. Anything like that, just skip that. Use water. Just drink plain water. Not too cold. Drink plenty of it. Sleep and warm up. That's all you need to do, really.
All right, episode over.
Yeah. All right. So, and other than that, the warm up, as I said, just look up experts on that topic. There are a couple of courses and really great people out there, and you will find all sorts of techniques and stuff there. So just know that it's important and do that.
You don't need to know a lot. You just need to know a few, and that'll be a good start anyways. Yeah.
Okay, so then the next on our list here is the headphone mix.
So this is now like the first kind of technical aspect as far as engineering goes, and that is just what the singer is actually hearing through their headphones while they are performing. And if anybody's played a show and had a bad monitor to mix, chances are you were a little grumpy afterwards, and the singer's screaming that he can't hear himself. That can happen in the studio too, and you really don't want it to. And there was like a quote in a podcast I heard with Tom Lord-Alge, and if anybody doesn't know who Tom is, him, TLA and CLA are these two mixers that are like the most famous mixers in the world, essentially. They're so good and so famous. But he was talking about getting his start into recording and how his brother CLA told him that every time you click play, it should sound like a mix, like a finished mix. You should always wow the people on the couch every time you click play, which is really a lot harder said than done. But that is like an absolute rule for when they throw on the headphones for the first time to hear what they're going to be singing to. It has to sound banging. They have to be stoked. Make that happen every time. And it's really easy. Or maybe not easy, but there's the like most surefire way to do that is just put on those cans before they get a chance to and build a mix for them. And then at least you know what they're going to be hearing. They're going to ask for changes and ask for more of their vocals or whatever. But start by dialing in a mix personally for them.
Absolutely. Yeah, before the session, do that. And like, yeah, there's the mix, and you're totally right with that CLA or TLA quote. I think that would be awesome if you could do that every single time. It's harder said than done, but it's true. It should be. It's a good approach for many reasons, because it always challenges you, and the more it sounds like a record, the better the decisions are going to be that you make.
Yes.
So that's also a neat side effect of that approach. But other than the actual mix, I think basic stuff like just like the latency is so important on headphones. Like the mix has to be awesome, of course. So as soon as they put the headphones on and you hit play, they should be wowed. That's super important, because then they have fun, and then they will enjoy performing to the mix, to the song. But simple basic things, you should be absolutely sure that those are taken care of, like the latency, which is the delay between like when you record something, the analog signal gets converted to digital. It goes through the computer, gets converted to analog again, and then goes to your headphone. And there is the computer takes some time to do that, and there's a little delay between the moment you say something and the moment you hear it on your headphones. And if that delay is too long, if that latency is too long, you will hear it and it will sound annoying. It will sound like an audible, obvious delay. And even if it's not really obvious as a delay, it can cause cancellations. It can cause phase cancellations with your own voice. So it's also always a good idea to just hit the phase button on your microphone channel, if you have one, or the phase button in the DAW or whatever you're monitoring through, and just see and ask the vocalist, the singer, what sounds better, like inverted or not. And there, of course, this is just one signal, so there's no, it doesn't have to be in phase with anything else. But the singer hears himself through the bones in the head and everything, and that the signal that you are hearing when you're singing gets mixed with what you're hearing in the headphones, and there could be cancellations. And sometimes hitting the phase button changed the whole situation for a vocalist when I did a session. So it's always worth trying that and making sure that the latency is not audible or annoying at all.
That phase on the headphone, that you just blew my mind. That's great.
Yeah, always try that. And it's so funny what difference that can make. I tried it myself, and I've never thought about that. But like, you just sometimes when a singer, I found this out when a person in the recording room was just always telling me to turn up his vocals, and I thought like it must be hurting already. It was so damn loud. I checked the phones before that, and like we were already clipping. I put a limiter on his monitoring bus and everything, and I just cranked it, and still he said he couldn't really hear it, or not really like it was sounding weird for some reason. He could not properly hear it. And then I just tried to invert the polarity, and boom, there it was, and it was freaking loud. And it was just because it was there, but it was not really there, because it was kind of canceling with what he heard through his head. That's how I found out.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Like, okay, here we go, guys. I'm going to click phase as I'm talking. Test, 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 test. Oh my God, it's a huge difference.
Does it make a difference?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Holy cow. Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Absolutely.
All right, so that'll not sound different to you guys, probably.
Nope.
But to me, it sure did. Holy cow. Okay, that's really cool.
Exactly. So I would always try that and see what sounds best, and because you don't know until you try. So yeah, that's one thing, and the latency, of course. The latency is the most obvious thing here, I think.
Yes. Yeah. So actually, I want to touch on that real quick, because people have trouble kind of understanding what difference that makes when it's close enough, or when it's kind of close anyways. But what I've heard this described to me, and I thought it just nailed it. The more latency you have when you're singing with headphones on, it seems like your vocal actually isn't in you anymore. It's sitting just in front of your face or something. And the lower you get that latency, the more it moves back and feels attached directly to your mouth and vocal cords. So instead of like singing this weird, it's kind of creates like this, you're singing into a vacuum kind of thing, and you're hearing your voice instead of creating it. And you deal with that latency, and that goes away. And it's just like, a huge obstacle removed. They're now part of what they're hearing rather than trying to like match to it. It's a weird feeling, but it really makes a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Basically what you're saying here is that it doesn't have to be an obvious delay. Just the way, as you said, the way it feels is different if it's a couple of milliseconds more or less. So,
make it as good as you can. That's all there is to it.
Exactly. And then there's a couple of tricks you can do. So the phase thing is one. Then the level obviously has to be so that the mix. Let's start again. The mix is important. The background mix, the instrumental mix, is really important because it has to be fun to sing to. It has to sound great, and you will want to make the singer stoked to perform to that. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing is latency, and they should be able to hear themselves properly, basically. And then as soon as you have that, you are like 70% there. But what then comes is you want to make the singer feel like a star. That's what I imagine. You want to make her sound really amazing on the headphones. You want to add some, if you can, depending on the gear you're using, you might be able to put EQ or compression or reverb or delay or anything on their monitor channel without recording that stuff. Some hardware lets you do that. Some interfaces have built-in effects that you can just route to the headphone without recording it. Or you can set up a send in the DAW to the headphone so it's separate from what you're actually recording. But find out a way to do that, because that makes a huge difference. Because people are, especially if you are not a pro musician who's used to those situations all the time, you are used to what records sound like. And when you make a record, you want to sound like those records. And if you start singing and it sounds like that, it's fun. And it's like, that's what you hope it would be, right? But if you hear that great sounding mix there and you're stoked, and then you start singing and it's just dry and thin and boring and doesn't really sound like a record, it's not that much fun. And it's depending on how you can handle that, it can be hard. So make sure that the vocal mix actually sounds amazing too, not only the instrumental.
I heard it said as it's called adding confidence. The more like reverb and delay and stuff you add on there, it's just like they get more and more. They're like, oh man, I sound good. And it just like helps them perform, right? It's kind of like, if you're playing like a rock guitar riff, you probably want a distorted guitar sound to be what you're hearing as you play it, and that's probably going to help you play that kind of rock style. So it's the same with vocals. You just want to support what they're doing and make it sound kind of finished. That's also going to help the other people in the room kind of understand the vision of what's being translated as well. Like going back to that quote, make it sound like a mix every time you click like play. That's going to help it. Like, okay, this vocal is kind of sitting in the mix now that we've added this processing. And you might change it all later, but it's going to help you make decisions on what's actually a good fit for that performance.
Yeah, absolutely. You might find things that you just did because it was funny or it made the singer feel good, but it might actually work well in the mix, and you want to make a note then and use it later, or send a note to your mixer and tell them, hey, when we were tracking, we listened to this, we dialed in this cool delay or reverb here, and we really liked that. Could you maybe replicate that or do that something similar in the mix?
Yeah. So you can even print it and send it to them, and like it's entirely common. I would say most of the time I end up keeping the delays I dial in while tracking vocals. I normally build a delay effects chain that makes it into the final mix before I've even finished tracking vocals. I'm just tweaking as we go, and it's like figuring out the timing that works with the song, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that's the delay I'm going to be using. It's done.
Yeah, sure. Same here. So it's a little more advanced, and you have to play with that, but you really can't do any harm here. Like, just experiment with that. As long as you record it to a separate track or just use it for monitoring in the beginning, there's nothing you can do wrong here. Just experiment with that, and whenever you come up with something that you really like, just record it to a separate channel, send it to the mixer, and maybe it gets used. Or if not, they can at least do something similar that works better in the mix, for example.
Reference it.
Yeah. Okay.
Totally.
So, and then I said there are a couple little tricks here with the headphone mix, and that is you can so if you're two people recording, if you're not recording yourself, but if you're two people, you can do some moves, some things that can influence the performance. So, for example, sometimes I want vocalists to really do all they can to put all they have into a certain part and really sing with energy, sing loud, sing powerful, like to the point where the voice almost breaks. That there's this fine line where some voices sound really, really amazing just before they don't sound amazing anymore, like just before that point where it breaks. And some people are just not confident enough, or they, for some reason, they just do not give it all in some situations where I want them to. And one thing you can do is just gradually lower their voice on the headphone mix without telling them, because they will want to hear them properly and they will sing louder sometimes if you do that. So if you want someone to sing really loud, you don't want to have the vocals too loud on the headphones, because then it sounds weird and they assume they are louder than they are. If they hear their voice really loud on the headphones compared to the mix, they assume they are too loud, or they are not, it doesn't feel right anymore. So if they are a little buried, they might want to sing louder and put more energy into it. That's the same phenomenon when you play live and you have shady monitoring. Most singers blow their voices because they think they have to sing really loud because they just can't hear themselves. And that's what you want in those situations, that they really fight with their monitorings, and that can sound awesome in those cases. So, and the other way around as well, if you think, if you want someone to sing really emotional, quiet, intimate, and really you want them to calm down a bit, to put not as much energy into it, make sure they hear every single detail, every breath, everything, so that they can really sing quietly and with all the emotion and everything, without fearing that it won't be audible or anything like that.
Totally. Yeah. Sometimes people just try too hard as well. They're just like, okay, I'm in the studio, I need to belt. And you're like, okay, you're going to blow your voice out. Let's give you a little bit more and get you to, So that is everybody's experienced that. You've all talked to your buddy in school or wherever you are, and he's got his earbuds in and he just yells back at you. You're like in the library. You're like, okay, that was funny. It's the same thing. That's what's happening here. What they're hearing affects how they project. And it's kind of advanced level stuff, though. You have to understand your DAW and your headphone system really well, because like if you try and do that and then you end up taking out like all of their vocals, they're going to notice. And this is something that they're not meant to notice. If they think that you're screwing with their headphone mix, it's not a good thing. There has to be trust between you and the singer. And if you're like, oh, can I get more vocals? And you're actually turning it down and they find out, it's bad.
Yeah. Or you can try to totally be open about it and say, okay, so I'm going to turn down your vocals a little bit, and
that's a better approach.
Yeah, just sing in the way that you can hear what you're doing. And if you don't hear it, you're not singing loud enough, So just challenge them a little bit and tell them what you're doing. That can also work. So yeah. Or tell them, I'm going to turn up your vocal really loud now on them so that you hear every single detail. You don't have to be afraid that anything is lost. Just sing quietly, sing with emotion, whatever you want to do. Be open about it and just tell them what happens if you're doing extreme things. That's totally fine.
Totally. So we should actually talk about microphones, maybe.
Okay. I remember you saying you basically have two mics that you use all the time, and one of them gets the chop down usually.
Yes. I do believe that. I believe that like as long as the mic is not a piece of garbage, you're probably going to be able to get a good vocal. And I think there's a lot of stuff like all the stuff we've talked about before this plays a bigger role to me than the microphone. And also where that singer is singing plays a bigger role as well. Like the sound of the room makes a bigger difference than the microphone in a lot of situations for vocals. I had to do a session over the internet just last week because of this whole lockdown thing. I was like kind of Skyped into them, getting a stream of the audio, and they were recording on their own side. And they started off in a little hallway. They thought, okay, like the smaller the space, the better. So they're in a hallway, and they sent it to me, and I was like, okay, let's definitely audition some different spaces because that sounds wretched. So I got them to record a take in like this other closet. and then also just right in the middle of like the bedroom that they were in, where the little makeshift studio was, and that bedroom sounded insanely better than both other options. There was just like weird resonance builds ups in the hallway and stuff like that, ambient noises in the other room kind of thing. So just changing, like doing the one part of the song 3 times into 3 different spaces, not spending too much time, just moving the mic, singing, moving the mic, singing kind of thing. And I just listened to him real quickly and was like, okay, that one's way better. We're going to do it there. Even though it's less convenient. And now he's in the same room as the computer and stuff like that. And they have to like turn off the monitors when he sings and stuff. Way less convenient for them. But what did I care? I was on the internet. Like, not even there. But it made a huge difference. So actually, I think location and then mic choice. And I'm downplaying mic choice, but it does make a big difference. And if I spent a bunch of money on more microphones, I might end up swapping up the mic more often.
Yeah.
But I just don't want people to obsess over it, you know? Like the mic is probably not the reason the vocal isn't sounding how you want.
Probably, yes. I totally agree with everything you said here. Usually it's also a matter of, to me, it's mostly a matter of, do I want to use a condenser or do I want to use a dynamic mic?
Yes.
And very rarely I choose between 2 or 3 condensers then or something, but usually one good sounding condenser mic or a dynamic mic will do the job. That's basically all I'm deciding. And maybe I'll try, if that's something super vibey or where I like something special, I might try something unconventional or a ribbon mic or whatever. Like, but for any normal situation, one of the 2 will do. And to be honest, if you find one great mic that's just not too extreme, that's just not too colored, you can capture a good vocal performance. Like I would be careful. I always tell people that they should make bold decisions and not play it safe. But in the case of vocal mics, it's kind of the opposite for me. I like all around mics that are not too colored. They might sound boring on their own, but you can shape them really well with EQ. They don't sound harsh too quickly. You can add top end without making them super annoying. So with vocal mics, I kind of like boring mics or not too bright mics. I kind of don't like the very hyped type of microphones because they can sound amazing if they work, but they can sound completely annoying if they don't work, and they can ruin everything, and it can be so hard to mix if you choose a wrong microphone. So in that case, that's one of the rare situations where I'm on the safe side, and I would just choose either something like a SM7 or something, a dynamic mic that just takes EQ really well, and it's not too sibilant and everything. Or some of those great podcast mics that are out there these days. There are different Rode podcast mics that they have. They all work really great. There is the RE20 that's really great. It's all dynamic mics that work really amazing. They all are not too bright, not too hyped, but still sound, I don't know, detailed enough. And yeah.
I was going to say, like, if you had to choose one all-around mic to suggest to people, are you willing to do that? Would you have one in mind?
Huh.
What do you think? Should we not do this?
I can do that. I mean, that's personal preference, of course, but there is one that I really like there. So I will say 2. One is the category that I just mentioned, all the dynamic mics, basically all the large diaphragm dynamic mics, not condenser mics. So the SM7, all the podcast mics, basically everything you would use for a broadcast, podcast, radio, whatever mic, dynamic mics, those will work. So the SM7, the RE20, the Rode podcast mics, everything like that. So that, I would say, that is one category. Just pick one of those and they will probably work.
Yeah.
One all-around condenser mic that I can recommend is the Sennheiser MK4. I don't know if you know that, but that's just never sounding annoying. That's detailed. That's always sounding expensive and high-end, but it's not too hyped. It's not too scooped. It's not missing anything. It's not too expensive. It works great on percussion, acoustic guitars, vocals, room mics. You can put it in front of a bass drum. It takes levels well. You can put it in front of a guitar amp. Like, that's a really great overall mic that I can recommend. Yeah.
Cool. I was going to say the Shure SM7, and I was going to just stop it there, not even go into condenser, because the reason I was having issues with the sound of those different vocals that I did with that band over the internet is because it was a condenser microphone, and the room plays a much larger role in the sound of the vocal when it is a condenser microphone. When it's a dynamic, it pretty much removes that from the equation. Not entirely, but to quite a large extent. And if you're recording your own band in your DIY studio, chances are room acoustics haven't really made it to your priority list yet. And we're going to get there, but we haven't yet. So that's coming on in a future episode. But a dynamic microphone is going to really ensure that you're not getting a bad vocal just because your room's not there yet. You haven't built a treated room to sing in. So like Benny said, if you go with any of those broadcast style, like the Rode Podcaster or Shure SM7, you're going to definitely be able to get a good vocal.
Yeah. One good example is actually right now, I'm sitting in a small, completely untreated office that sounds completely terrible. It's not built for, it's an office at home. I don't do mixed work in here with loudspeakers or anything. But I'm talking into a dynamic mic in this room, completely untreated. You will still hear a little reverb, a little room. But if I had a condenser mic right now, this would sound horrible. I would never be able to record a podcast with a condenser mic and some distance between the mic and myself. I have to talk into a dynamic mic and basically eat the mic to get the room out of the recording, and it works with a dynamic mic. It's usable. You can do that. And that's what Malcolm describes here. So in most situations, when your room is not there yet, a dynamic will be much better for you for that reason alone.
Yeah, totally. Just don't believe all the hype that you need a U87 $4,000 mic. You don't. There's so many hugely famous records made with dynamic mics. You'll be fine.
If the SM7 is good enough for Michael Jackson's Thriller or the Foo Fighters or whoever, or Metallica or whoever used that,
Lamb of God.
It's probably good enough for your record. So, yeah,
totally. So that said, if you have the options, so say I'll do productions with rented studios. So we'll go to a big studio and do a band, and there's a mic locker there. I might spend the extra time finding the right mic. Then, I'll make my educated guesses. I never go through more than 2 or 3, but I'll set up 2 right away. Maybe I'll just set up 1 and be like, I'm pretty sure this is the one for you because I'm experienced with these mics. I know what your voice sounds like, and I know what I think I'm aiming for. So I'll choose the expensive mic, say. And if it doesn't sound kind of perfect, because I have these other options, I might go and grab a different one and see if the S's sound a little different on the singer's sibilants or whatever kind of thing. But we're talking I'm now making the 5% differences kind of thing by choosing a different mic. And it's because I have the time, the budget, and the mic locker. If I didn't have those things, I would have just gone with the first mic.
Yeah.
And it would have been great.
Absolutely. And that's the last thing I want to say here, the only situation where this first mic can be a real problem, and it can, is if you're using a really overhyped microphone, and especially in the budget category of condenser microphones, it's very dangerous. And that's why this tip with the dynamic is so valuable, because if you decide against the dynamic because you think you have to, the only professional thing is a large diaphragm condenser because you see that in all the pictures and you think that you need to have that, but you can't really buy a good one. So you end up buying a 200, 300 or even cheaper condenser microphone. You could end up choosing one, and it's not too unlikely that happens. You could choose one that is way overhyped, that sounds bright and exciting when you first hear it, but it's actually pretty hard to deal with in the mix. It can sound harsh, it can add weird sibilants and everything, and there is a couple of notorious mics in that category that can really make it hard to make the vocals sit well and mix. And I would always prefer a good dynamic mic over any of those cheap condenser mics. So yeah, that's really the interesting. So yeah,
absolutely agreed with that.
Okay, then. Go on. What do you want to say?
I think we're both moving on to the next thing, and it's how you use it.
Yeah,
that really counts. It's all about how you use it. So especially with condensers, actually, the angle of the mic, how close they are to the mic, those things will make a bigger tonal difference than a different mic sometimes. I mean, that's kind of a bold statement, but it does matter. And just you have to be willing to experiment a little bit about that and learn your mic, because different mics have different responses depending on how they're addressed. And then experiment, learn, and coach the person in front of the mic. So I always determine a distance that sounds good with their voice, and then sometimes I'll mark it with tape, or we'll just figure out like a hand distance from the pop filter, stuff like that, just to keep it consistent and kind of lock in a tone. Because if they start by singing really close to the mic and it's all bassy, and then by the end of it they're really far away, you're gonna have a really hard time mixing that.
Absolutely. Yeah, great tip here. I never really did that. I never really communicated a distance where they should. I listen to it, and when they leave the sweet spot, I just tell them. But it's actually a good idea to measure it, sort of, and say, okay, keep it within that range or something like that. So
yeah, my starting point with like condenser microphones is like the hang loose symbol. I don't know if anybody knows what that is. It's like the surfer shake.
Yeah.
Man, that sounded dumb. But anyways, you probably know what I mean. But I get them to like from the like capsule of the microphone to their lip is kind of the spacing, and that's probably not a safe thing with coronavirus touching your lip. But like that, about that is kind of my starting point, and then I might say get a little closer, get a little further back, and then from there, there's like, okay, I can reset to that if they have to go to the washroom or whatever. If they can just kind of get roughly back in place pretty easily.
Okay, so I just want to say that I want to go through the differences that positioning actually makes, and I kind of break that down into several categories. So the closer you get, as Malcolm said, the more bass you have. That's called the proximity effect. The further away you are, the less bass you're gonna have. On the other hand, the closer you are, the more direct and intimate and upfront it will sound, and the less you will have, the less room information you will have in the recording. The further away you get, the more important the room becomes. It can sound more balanced, but you will get more of the ambience. So depending on your room sound, there's a little trade-off, and you will find to have the sweet spot. You will need to find the sweet spot there. The sweet spot in most untreated rooms is probably a little closer than it would be in a great room. So you might have to compensate for that proximity effect a bit, because if you go too far away from the mic, the room will not allow for that. So that's one thing. And the other thing is plosives and sibilants. Those are things that are really important when you track a vocal. And if you are really close to a vocal mic and you don't pay attention to that, you will probably hear that in these episodes, by the way. There are pops every now and again here because we are really close to our microphones, and sometimes you get this p sound. I don't know if that was one, but sometimes you hear that plosive thing, and you don't want that in a vocal recording of a song. So also a trade-off between different distance and avoiding those plosives, but still being close enough and direct enough. And there are certain things you can do in addition to the distance, to avoid those things. There's pop filters. You've all seen them probably. Those round, most of the time they are like round discs in front of the mic with mesh, or they're made of metal sometimes, different materials that you put between you and the microphone. They diffuse the air coming out of your mouth into the microphone, and they prevent the air from hitting the capsule directly and causing this weird noise. There is a little trick that I like to use that can work for both plosives and sibilants sometimes, which is you can use a pen or a pencil or something like that and attach it to the front of the mic with a rubber band around the mic in front of the capsule and sing into that, because that will split the airflow up and like move it away from the capsule while still sounding pretty transparent. So that can work for some vocalists that are really hard to deal with. And then there's the angle that you can use. There's a difference between singing directly into the mic and like pointing the mic slightly away from your mouth in one direction, because then also the air doesn't hit the diaphragm directly. And and I would experiment with those things. There's no right or wrong here. It totally depends on the voice. Just know that it makes a difference. Find the right angle, find the right distance, have a listen for plosives and sibilants, like S's and all the consonants sounds, and find the right spot, the trade-off between direct upfront sound and your room and the balance and everything. And somewhere there's a sweet spot for you, and it's different for all sorts of people.
Yeah, totally. There's also like mic technique, which is like we won't get too far into that, and it is sometimes depending on like the vocalist you're working with, and your experience. If you're the singer, it's not even worth considering this. But sometimes if it's like a P sound, they can just angle off for that start of that word. Even they just like will move off center and sing the beginning of the P away from the microphone, and that's enough to just like dodge the air. Also, dynamics can be played with a lot by aiming and moving. You know, a big, huge yell can back off the mic sometimes without too much of a tone change and keeping the gain in a better spot. So there's all these kind of like little moves. Like if you watch a really trained singer performing, like watch, I don't know, who's the Titanic singer lady?
Celine Dion.
Celine Dion. Yeah.
Isn't she even Canadian? You have to know that.
Well. Our most successful artists aren't always our pride here in Canada. Looking at you, Beebs.
You could probably tell me every single hockey player or whatever.
No, I'm just joking. There's a lot of great Canadian artists that are killing it, and it is cool. But anyways, I haven't even seen one of her things, so I don't even know. But she is so experienced and has been doing it for so long that I bet if you looked up a video of her singing into a condenser microphone, she's probably all over the place, but it's probably entirely intentional. It's mic technique. People learn that stuff. And somebody at that level definitely knows what they're doing with a microphone.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yeah, that's basically all there is to the positioning thing, I think, because it's really depending on the voice. So, a little recap. We had performance, vibe, communication, headphone mix, mic choice, positioning, signal chain. Yeah, that was also on our list. I don't know, but it's basically what we mean with mic choice is the whole thing before your computer. But in most cases, this will be the mic, a cable, an interface, and then your computer. You can have external preamps, you can have compressors, EQs, whatever in there. But essentially, if you have to rely on any of those things to get a great vocal sound, there's something else wrong, I guess. So if your room works, if you have a great singer, if you have a decent mic, and if you position it correctly, it should not sound like total trash. And it's certainly fun to have those hardware things and a great chain, but you have to know what you're doing because you cannot undo it. And unless you are going for something weird, creative, then you should have pretty high-end components there, unfortunately, to make it worthwhile. So I don't know. That's probably not the situation for many DIY bands. But if you have great gear, or if you want to do something weird with guitar pedals or whatever you have available, and then throw it in the chain there and record it, of course. So, but just know that everything in between, the stuff that's in between your mic and your computer is not the most important stuff.
Yeah, totally. I track with a compressor 99% of the time, but if I didn't have one, I would still track the vocals. So it's not going to stop me.
Exactly. And then the last bullet point here, and we can keep that short, is because we've already talked about it a little bit, is comping and cleanup. And that's what I was talking about where I said I would come back to that. Because you can completely outsource that. Of course, you don't have to do that if you don't want to deal with that. It's a little technical. Not everybody can do it. So you can just record it and don't do any editing. But what I think, or what we think you should be able to do, is basic comping and cleaning up your tracks. So
yes,
putting all the takes together to create one final take, and then cleaning that up to get rid of all the extra space between vocal parts, all the noise that's not supposed to be there, trim the ends and the beginnings, basic stuff like that without touching the actual vocal performance. You should be able to do that. And what would even be better is, and that's the approach that I was talking about earlier in this episode today, what would even be better, in my opinion, is to be able to do comping and basic cleanup fast, intuitively, and on the fly while you are recording without the singer even noticing. That's a little advanced and it takes practice, But there's a huge benefit in it if you learn that, because you can avoid an entire step almost. And instead of taking notes of everything that happens, if you are just fast in your DAW and if you can just edit on the fly and remove stuff and move stuff around and build a comp while the singer is tracking. And there's no way around practicing that, and it will take a while. But if you can do that, and if you can take a few days to really practice certain moves and get to know all the shortcuts and everything, it's so cool, because when the singer leaves the recording room or just when they are done tracking and they want to listen back to the performance, you can already have the comp there basically if you're good at that. And it's not as complicated as it sounds. It's advanced, but it's not impossible to do, and you don't have to do it perfectly. But yeah, it's just much faster and more fun than having to go through 43 takes and then remembering which part was the best in which take and everything. And you will probably miss something in your notes, and then you have to go search for it, and you're not sure if that really was the take or not. So yeah, I'm a huge believer in fast comping on the fly, and also getting rid of stuff that you already know you will never need it. With some things you never know, some things you might want to keep just because you're not sure, but like any real obvious mistakes or noise or anything that should not be there, just get rid of it right away. It's one more thing that you don't have to go through later. So yeah. What do you think about that, Malcolm? Is that too advanced, or I just believe in it?
No, I think people will get value out of this, because it took me a long time to figure out how to record a vocal session, how to run a vocal session, I should say. I knew how to record vocals, but I wasn't getting the results I wanted, and they were taking forever. We spend all day working on a song and be like, okay, well, some of it turned out okay. We'll just come back another day and try and do the same song, which that should not be the case. Nobody gets better at singing after 8 hours. Like if it's not done well before that, there's definitely something at play, and it might be how you're running the session. And for me, it totally was. I just didn't have an organized way of checking all the boxes and seeing the song develop in front of me and get finished. So developing a system for this, and you will go through multiple ones as you go and deal with different singers and different projects, and your own taste change is super important. But it's just most important that you actually have a system for getting it done. So for myself, you kind of figured it out just from talking earlier, Benny, but I kind of do the same as you, but also all the other stuff. So I've got a piece of paper in front of me, and I've got like V1, V2, V3, V4, and that's like verse line 1, verse line 2, verse line 3, verse line 4, and then chorus, verse. I just plot out the whole song structure like that for each kind of line, and depending on how the vocal phrases are laid out, those numbers might mean different things. But essentially, it's chunks of the song, and I make notes of what I liked. Only what I like, not what I didn't like, because I don't want to know about what I didn't like. That's not relevant as I go. But I also grab anything that's like a hole in one, like a nailed take. I instantly slide that onto a comp track. So I have a track sitting there waiting for audio to be pulled onto. So by the end of a song or a few takes, I kind of have most of the parts on my comp track. Not all of them, but sometimes all of them. And it also, the reason I have kind of both these setups, like the comping as I go and the notes, is because some parts or some singers might need to go about it a different way. So like I mentioned earlier, I might let them sing the whole song. And in that case, I can't really comp as I go, because I can't grab audio that is being recorded. So if they're singing the whole song start to finish, I'm just making notes. And then I might start comping as I give them like a couple minutes to rest after that take before we start the next one. But as soon as they're ready to go, I'm going to click record, and I might have more comping to do, kind of thing. But I am comping as much as possible ahead of time, because then I can look at that track and be like, okay, I know that we've got all of these parts, but there's a hole here and a hole here, and I've got to focus on those. Instead of getting them to sing the chorus again when I already have it. Like I know I have it. It's right there. I can see it. I just get them to sing the part that is missing. And then you just get done way quicker. You have something to show them if they want to hear it. Yeah. So that's kind of how I go about it.
Yeah. Totally, and it depends on the software you're using as well. Because in Cubase, it's much easier to do that than it is in Pro Tools, apparently. Because I don't need a separate comp track or anything. I just record one take over the others all in one track, and it automatically creates a folder, and I can like just mark a certain piece of the waveform, and that will be in the comp, and then I mark another word, and that will be in the comp, and I don't have like the comp gets done automatically. I can mark things.
I can do that too.
Okay.
I just like having a different track. I have like a tracking track and a comp track, and it's a personal choice. Most people, sorry, I should have said playlist because that's how most people would do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's different ways to do that, as you said. What matters is remember the best parts. Remember the stuff that needs to go away or get rid of it immediately. Learn how to do basic comping and editing and cleaning. So that you A, not deliver a mess of tracks to the mixing engineer, and B, you can feel confident that you actually recorded a final take. Because if you don't know how to do those things, there's always this uncertainty that you assume you have recorded enough, but you're not quite sure. And if there's one part where it's actually not cool in any of the takes, you're screwed there. So at some point you need the final take. So the faster you are there, and the more intuitively you can do it, the better, I think. Because also, getting back to a certain spot of the song later can be very hard because the singer is not in the same mood anymore. It's not the same vibe. It's totally different. And then you have to replicate whatever was there before if you want to punch in there. So if you can do it right away and just be sure, okay, we got that part. We have a take here. Let's move on to the next thing. That's just a good thing because you can commit to stuff and you just know it's there. So
do you prefer to do it part by part, get them to sing like the verse 4 times or whatever before you move on, or how do you like to do that?
Totally depends on the singer. I personally like it if singers can handle that. I like it because I just want to I want to focus on one thing. Sometimes I create a loop and let them sing over and over again without communication in between, because it gets better and better and better. Then eventually they will hit a point where it doesn't get better anymore, and then I'll stop. So I prefer to do that. But some people don't want to do that, or but most people can do part by part at least. What I will do is I will have them sing the song start to finish once or twice or maybe 3 times, just to get into to get to know the song, the vibe, everything. And I always tell them, that's also a little thing here. Now that I say it publicly, it probably won't work for your band anymore, but I'll do it. And everybody does that. I tell the singer, like, okay, let's do the sound check. I will dial in tone. You can warm up. You can get used to the song. It's not about like getting the perfect take yet. It's not about like, it's only sound check. So, and they will sing and try stuff. And I will, of course, record that because sometimes that's the best take, but they just don't know.
Always do that.
But always do that. Always record everything, even the sound check. Record the first take because they might... Because of the fact that they don't think it's serious, they might do things they cannot do again, and you want to capture that. And sometimes that's magic. So,
when you hit that moment and you're comping and you realize you don't have that one spot, if you go and check that warm-up take, it's there, I swear. It's always on that warm-up take.
Yeah, exactly. So I would do that.
The lifesavers, I was there.
Yeah, exactly. So I would do that. I would record the warm-up take. I would have them sing the whole song 2 or 3 times to get comfortable, and then I would start, and I would ask if they are comfortable focusing on single parts now. Yeah. And then I would go through the song. I would do the stuff that's... and I would do it in order. I would have... a system where I know the song before we start, and then I would talk to the singer which parts are most demanding, which parts are easier to sing, and then I will figure out an order of things that makes sense, because you don't want to blow your voice with the first thing you recorded, then you cannot record anything else anymore. So if I know there is a really intense scream part that has the potential to ruin everything else afterwards, I will do that. This is the very last thing I will do. So things like that are also to keep in mind, and then I go through that in order, and also if I know there are parts in there that are really hard to reach, like really high notes, where I know I don't have many takes we don't have many takes to accomplish that. I will do that after the warm up, but pretty early, because chances are that after a couple of takes they just cannot sing that anymore.
That's really smart.
So
Yeah.
I do it like that, and that alone is reason enough for me to do it in parts and not the whole song.
Yeah. And remember, like we said earlier, that the singer is going to like assume that because you're asking them to do it again, it's because they're not doing it right. So you have to like constantly be reassuring them that they're doing everything right. They just have to do it a couple more times just so you like, because like, just because they didn't get it how you want it doesn't mean that it's technically wrong. It's just that you know that like they just got to try and do the same thing again, not try and do something different. Just try and do the same thing again and it might be better. So constantly reassuring them. I almost never let them sing the same part more than like 3 times before I move on. So say we're doing like the first line of the verse, they do it 3 times, we still don't have it. I'll probably make a note of which one I thought was best, but just move on. Just move on and you can come back to it. Just don't get stuck, because if they get stuck, they just like it's gone. Like they're hyper focused on why they can't sing this one line, and it's always the first line. By the way, the first line always sucks. You have to come back to the first line, like every time.
Yeah.
And then you just got to build momentum and start banging it off. And it's weird because that momentum actually happens, and I don't know why, but you just like, okay, we don't got that, but we're not going to tell them. We're just going to be like, okay, great, let's move on. And we get the next line, and then we're like, okay, move on. Maybe they still don't have that, but then they start getting it, and you actually do start getting it quicker and quicker, and they get used to hitting it after the first couple tries. And then you just do your comp, circle back. Hey, we just got to patch up a couple spots. Do you mind singing the first line again? And then they just like, they're warmed up, they're good, they hit it off.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, that kind of sums it up and kind of gets back to the first comfort level bullet point here, because it just is the most important thing, that in combination with the communication. So yeah, that's it basically. Performance.
Yeah, I feel like there's tons of stuff in there. It's a deep episode.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I truly believe that if you get these 5 things right, that nothing's gonna stop you. You have a great vocal there. Like always assuming that the song and the lyrics work and are great. That's obviously gonna need to be the case. But if you have a great song and a great singer and you follow these 5 things, so again, performance, vibe, warming up, atmosphere, that's the first category here. Then the communication, that's also affecting the performance. The headphone mix, it's also affecting the performance. And then mic choice, positioning, signal chain, room, the whole setup basically, that's number 4. And then 5, the comping and cleanup. Those 5 things are what you need. And it's a lot, but at the same time, it's pretty simple. It's only one microphone. It's not like making a whole drum kit or anything. It's more emotional. It's deeper. It's a more complicated instrument, but it's a simpler thing to record on the technical side. So, yeah. I hope that was helpful, and feel free to ask us any questions if we said something that's confusing or that you didn't quite get, because it was really a lot. But as I said, most of it is simpler than it sounds, and we are happy to answer any questions and help you with your personal situation here. And no matter what, just let us know what you're struggling with when you record vocals, and we'll be happy to help. Then let's wrap it up. There's one more thing I want to tell you about. That's a video on the Self-Recording Band website. If you go to the selfrecordingband.com/vocal recording, there is a blog post and a video where I'm showing actually some of those things that we've been talking about today, and you might find that helpful, and it's an additional resource that I want to tell you about. It's free. It's no email address required or anything. Just go to the selfrecordingband.com/vocal recording. And as always, there is the 10-step guide to successful DIY recording that you can download on my website. So if you go to the selfrecordingband.com, right on the homepage there, you can't miss it. There's this free download, this 10-step guide that you can download. And today we talked about 5 steps to a pro vocal. This guide has 10 steps that walk you through the whole production process, basically. So if you're interested in that, if you want to learn more, go download that. And yeah, that's it for today, I guess, Mark, right?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you. Bye.